Hey, what's up, guys? As we get a few more people on, we're gonna dive into. I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna look into some awesome videos I've seen lately. And so I'd love for you guys to join me. Live chat. Just gonna move this. I don't know why it won't let me find- but As you guys keep jump in, let me know where you're from in the chat. Also, yeah, let me know where you're at in the chat. We're gonna share the screen. We're gonna be watching, doing some reaction videos and stuff. Would love to have your feedback as well. Because I'm definitely not gonna have all the answers. My goal would be is have to be one minute. I'm gonna blow up you know who this is. And Alex O'Connor is a fascinating person. I actually have invited him to be on the show because of how like fascinating his thought process.
There was neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. Very clearly, the first century Church of Jesus Christ was committed to slavery as unacceptable.
Well, Cliff, I wonder if you know what you've just committed yourself to. I didn't know that you were also a woke gender abolitionist. We have it in the scripture. There is neither slave nor free. Well, it also says there's no male or female. There's no male, no female, no slave, no free, no Jew, no Gentile, for we're all one in Jesus. If we're supposed to interpret that as God condemning the earthly practice of slavery, he also says there is no male and there is no female. So is God also a gender abolitionist? I mean, I don't want to guess your position. I don't think you'd believe that. If that's the case, then the fact that God is saying that although there's male and female on earth, of course, in Christ we're all one. If we're going to interpret that way, I think we also have to say, even though, of course, on earth there's slave and master, of course, but we're all one in Christ. In other words, I think this might be a reaffirmation of the earthly practice of slavery.
Galatians 3:28.
That's a good one. I would love to hear what happens next. So obviously, you always have to take into context when someone does a like a video like this. No, that's great. I'm pointing the way the video should be, but it's reverse. Okay. When people do a video like this, yeah, you got to take into consideration that Cliff had a response that came after that, but that was cut off. But I love this video because that is a good point. See, I love how he thinks that he is asking. Now, my interpretation of that all there's a couple different thoughts, and I'm not a theologian. I'm not telling you. I'm not representing any teaching or anything. But my thought on that is that first of all, the word slave is used in the Bible, but what I have heard in my understanding of it all was that the the term slave isn't what we kind of think of it today. It kind of became terrible later. I think there's actually a place in the Bible where it tells them how to treat their slaves. in the way that it is described and how some of the early church fathers talked about it as well, it is actually more of like a worker. Like they actually treated their slaves well. Um, there's like the parable about all the people coming to work in the field, and they tell them to pay everybody the same. And some people get offended, some people don't. But they're being fair to those people. The people that came to work in the field, the people that came to work in the early morning versus the people that came to work later on, they're paying them the same. And so, very interesting one. But I'm gonna go through a few of these. So I'd love to hear your guys' feedback though, as we kind of get into
There's only one other option other than obviously that Christ rose from the dead. I would ascertain, and you can disagree if you feel free. It would be that his disciples, people who truly loved him, stole his body and somehow disposed of
Well, it
it.
could have been somebody else who stole the body.
And but what motivation would they have to steal the body
So
and dispose of it?
grave robbing was quite popular in that time.
But they were guards,
Around
remember?
that area. Well, there are guards that are only reported to Matthew. And what does Matthew say about the guards? He's the only person that reports the guards. And what do the guards do? They say that Jesus has disappeared, and the high priests pay the guards to tell people that the body's been stolen. Now, what does Matthew say? He says, and this is a rumor that they went and spread that persists to this day. So the author of Matthew knew that there were people who were saying that somebody stole the body and intentionally puts these guards there, has this story of the high priest paying them off to spread this rumor in order to combat that rumor. So we know that people in the early church, before the writing of the Gospel of Matthew,
Weren't in the impression
thought that the body was stolen. There's even Tertullian talks about, this is amazing, Tertullian talks about a theory that some people were spreading that the gardener had stolen the body of Jesus because he didn't want people to come and spoil his lettuces when they came to see him as a shrine.
There's only one.
That's an interesting one. Like I said, his mind works in such great ways. And I think my main thing with that would just be that there is no, there's no, like he's kind of using the like proof that Jesus' body, maybe if he didn't resurrect, maybe that his body was stolen, and kind of the same burden of proof ends up falling on him as well. And so it's like, so if it was stolen and disposed of, how is it disposed of, and everything like that. So the thing that he would have to think about next is like, again, it's only a short, but it's again everything are the eyewitness testimonies of the people who saw him later, especially people seeing him at the like in different parts of the world around the exact same time. And so a lot of it will come down to that as well. But taking like minute details like this and things that are said in the Bible is, I think this is why it's extremely important to get our chops up and being able to respond to some of this stuff. But this one in particular, actually, it's going to be most of all these because they're shorts. I don't think it's something to get hung up on. Another thing that Alex O'Connor makes big arguments for is he does talk about the Gospels contradicting each other, which they don't, but he talks about contradicting each other where it's like one Gospel says this, the other Gospel says this. And they're not super contradictory to each other, but like one of them saying like he returned to Nazareth, but one of them saying he went down to Egypt, wherever, then returned later. And just because one omits the other part doesn't mean that they contradict each other. And I've heard that talked about before. And I've actually thought about bringing Carlos Broussard on to do an episode like this, where we take on and watch some of these videos, and then take on the challenges, because they, like I said, Alex's brain works so awesome. I think more people actually need to think like him. And people, he said in a video one time, people tell him all the time, if you become Christian, you are going to be like a very effective missionary, because he questions things and he does his research and he thinks about it. I just think he's just not connecting certain dots, I think. And then plus there's a leap of faith that you have to, I think some people want every single answer to every little thing, or they're not going to be consider themselves Christians. One big one, we'll probably find it here. This is like an impromptu thing. I'm not even like specifically looking at certain ones. You can just tell them just scrolling through his short. But one of his big points is that if we have an all-loving God, why would he allow saying like if there's a random tree in the middle of the woods, no people around, and it falls, lands on a deer, the deer's pinned, broken legs, broken back, and it's stuck, can't get out, is in agony, absolute pain, and then dies. Like, why would an all-loving God let that happen? And it had a great answer for it from Carlo Broussard, who's a Catholic apologist, and he said, living in a world like that, where like if you say, okay, God will stop that kind of stuff, but now people say, like, why, why wouldn't God like stop the car wreck from happening, stop the truck driver from ever getting in the car and getting? There would be no stop to it. That's what I'm trying to say. And so, what that I believe what he called was a perpetual, is a perpetual miraculous state of living or something like that. It's like this state of living where just perpetual miracles are happening. And in that state, you might as well just make the world without material. Like, why even make things at all? And then my thought process behind it all is that if we're going to think about like bad things happening and evil happening, stuff like that, like we are the sinners. We're the ones that broke the world, and with sin, like evil and sin came into this world. And I don't think the fact that like a branch falling and killing someone in the wild or killing an animal or anything, I just truly don't think that that's a good argument for God not existing or not being all loving. But I do believe, like I said, that He has a great mind for thinking. That is a great thought to have. But I don't think it's sufficient enough to say God does. What's the next?
But repeat your claim one more time.
That suffering is unexpected if a good God exists.
And the most beautiful thing is that our God is not unfamiliar with suffering as He suffered Himself. So would you say that there is like some beauty in suffering in some way?
I would say that there can be sort of poetically, you can look at suffering and think that's a beautiful story, but I don't think that the person suffering, especially if they die as a direct result, might think that. Also, I think that if I knew someone whose child died of leukemia and suffered for it,
Right.
and I went to them and said, but hey, there's some beauty in the suffering, isn't there? I think I'd be
Right.
kicked out of the funeral.
Right. Well, I would say like the same thing for a woman giving birth, right? It's suffering, like it sucks, it hurts.
Sure. But imagine you could have the giving birth without the pain of giving birth.
Right.
Would you prefer that?
Of course, yeah, you would prefer that.
So then if God can bring about the good stuff without the bad stuff,
Right.
then there's no reason to bring about the bad stuff.
Right.
So what we have to show is why the bad stuff is necessary to bring about the good stuff.
Repeat your.
That's another good one. That is a good thought. I think that was one of the easier ones to come back because it's like he said, "Why is the good necessary?" Or what? Sorry. Why is the bad necessary for the good stuff happening? And it's like that's not what Christians believe. And again, I love that he uses that example of like, or she brings up the example of like pregnancy and suffering and then like good coming out of it. It's not necessarily a good argument for what he's going on, but it is super cool because the like one of the first things that God says when again man brings evil and sin into the world, He tells them like you will till the soil and you will experience pain in childbirth. So again, it's God is not the one putting the evil and suffering into the world. We brought it into the world. It's a fallen angel, Satan, Lucifer, who is down on the earth. And now sometimes he does make the argument of like, why would God allow Lucifer, Satan, demons, and everything to interact with humans? And yeah, just again, great questions to have. And I'm not a theologian. I love the way he thinks, and I think that people that have questions like this, they do tend to be the biggest ones that when they finally convert, if they convert, like we obviously continue to pray for us, when people convert like this, they become extremely great evangelists. But that one's interesting, and the point kind of got away from him because again, he said, why is it necessary to have bad for then good to happen? It's not the case at all. It's not what they're saying. Also, a little context here as well. If you guys hadn't seen Trent Horn's video, Trent Horn actually mentioned that he applied to be on this. He sent his debate with Alex O'Connor into the show, and he applied to be on the show, and he did not get invited, which shows that Jubilee is really looking to put like an expert, and I say that in quotes believe Alex is kind of like one of the leading experts for atheism right now. But then they don't take the lead experts in Christianity to put into this situation. They do have one guy that I believe is Mormon that comes up later and has a decent conversation with him, but very interesting. So let's go on to the next.
If God exists and wants to love everybody, why he chose to imbue the world with so much suffering that is at least seemingly completely inexplicable?
Are you a father?
No.
I'm a father. I want my son to become better than I am. Is it possible for him to reach his potential without suffering in his life?
I don't want to talk about your son because it's tragic to think about, but somebody else's son
Sure.
has suffered and died immediately as a
Sure.
result of that suffering. They don't get to develop in the same way.
I would agree that on a micro level, it's very hard to justify. And we can ask the question, why doesn't God intervene on all
So
of
look,
these
you might be able to
sufferings?
justify an amount of suffering. There are some instances where maybe a certain amount of suffering brings about a certain amount of good in a situation. But when a child dies of leukemia and they're dead,
Could there be a purpose to it? What if the death of the child brings their parents to God?
then
to
perhaps
salvation?
then the parents should be grateful that their child got leukemia because it's doing the will of the Lord.
Not necessarily.
And again, it's a great example of why like they need people like Trent Warren on this. Do believe you guys did not do Christianity a favor here. Definitely, this was set up to, and I'm seeing it now in all of them, set up to make the person in the chair have an easier time. But if you guys have, if you guys have seen the debate that Trent Warren and Alex had, they actually have a great friendship. So I don't know why you wouldn't have accepted him or even kicked someone off the panel to put Trent Warren on here. Baffles me. But this is a good example of just a terrible example given. And again, it is brought. It is again a bad example is brought up by just like a normal person, and this is why we need to have like our chops ready to go. And this is why I'm working on getting my chops to go. I do not think I would have done any better than people on this. Maybe a couple of people, but not some of the people. But again, Alex is making the argument that God created the world and he put suffering and good into the world. But it's not the case. He put us into the world. The fallen angels that were down here are the ones that tempted us, tempted Adam and Eve, that represent all people, mankind, humans. And they brought evil into the world. So suffering happens because of the disobedience we have to God.
I actually met the guy who caught the Unabomber.
The Unabomber, of course, the terrorist who was sending bombs in the post to people.
When the Unabomber published his manifesto in the Washington Post, it started with his brother noticing this writing and was like, that kind of sounds like how Ted writes. And then he sent that tip into the FBI. Slowly, they analyzed every single phrase in his manifesto and in the writings that his brother provided to the FBI. And he has certain linguistic quirks. Like he says, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And he says it like the wrong way.
Instead of, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't eat your cake and have it too.
He has like a few other like small oddities that like really nobody else says.
And it was those linguistic quirks that gave him away. It's called an idiolect.
Idiolect is the language that you speak. Nobody else speaks what you speak because you speak with a combination of your family background, education, geographic background, all of this coalesced. It's like a linguistic fingerprint. I actually met the guy.
I mean, that has nothing to do with it.
Stop using AI tools.
Everybody knows what a euphemism is. Can you?
So when you say the book of Isaiah is intact, how similar is it to the book of Isaiah that's in the Bible?
That one is fascinating. So this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when we discovered the Great Isaiah Scroll, previous to that, the earliest copy of Isaiah that we had was in the Masoretic text, which is in the Middle Ages.
Whoa.
Yeah, we literally pushed back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that would be amazing if it were true. In fact, the Dead Sea version of the Isaiah scroll is not quite identical to the Masoretic text. That is the one that we know from the Bible. Can you guess how many textual variants there are between the two? Take a guess. 1 that Wes forgot about? 10? 100? Try more than 2,600. Yeah. Now, most of these variants are small. They're differences in spelling, for example, but some of them are more significant. For instance, in Isaiah chapter 2, the end of verse 9 and all of verse 10 are simply missing from the Dead Sea version. They're just not there, which tells us that they were a later addition. But Wes Huff told Joe Rogan that the scroll is word for word identical with the Masoretic text.
That was word for word.
Yeah, that's something you don't want to do. You don't want to make claims like that. And sometimes that just shows that you like are just listening to others and you're not doing your own research and stuff. But yeah, that's terrible. Some stuff like this are always really interesting, and this is the stuff I love to write down and ask people, ask my friends that are like have degrees and do this kind of stuff. Having a great relationship with Carlos has been awesome because we have been able to have these conversations where we talk about stuff like this, and he's much well versed than I am. So this one I like because I don't have anything to say about it. The only thing I would say is when you hear stuff like this is a great opportunity to go and do your own research. So that's really interesting. But yeah, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to start making some really I don't know the word I'm looking for, like just absolute claims like that. You don't want to start making absolute claims like that because people will pick it apart really fast. So yeah, and then the fact that it had 2,600 differences. But literally, Wes said they're absolutely word for word. It kind of baffles me, but it's kind of the I don't know. Okay, let's go to another one.
Dual consciousness theory. In 1908, it was.
She has a visitation from the angel Gabriel, who tells her that she's going to conceive. And she says, well, I'm the slave of God. Do with me what you will. When you start thinking about that for a second, it's troubling. The angel doesn't say, is this okay with you? You all right with this, Mary? It's that this is going to happen. And she says, well, I'm your slave. And the assumption is, well, of course, she's going to be happy about this. The text doesn't say anything about her being happy about it, but they submit to the will of God. It is striking that she doesn't say, I'm your servant. I'm your slave.
You said a second ago, not servant, but slave. The NIV has, I am your servant, or I'm the Lord's servant. Do you think that that's a mistranslation? Do we know that she really meant something more like a slave here?
Yeah, we do. The word is doule, and it means a person who's owned by someone else and is required to do with what they ask. There are separate words for servants, which would be somebody who serves somebody willingly, but they're not owned by the other person. The reason, especially in American translations, for not using the word slave is because translators are afraid that people will conjure image of African American slavery. And so the word is slave. It's absolutely slave. But many translators translate it as servant. By the way, the NRSV committee voted for slave, but the National Council of Churches that published the NRSV decided to change it, even though they weren't the translator.
That's a good example of someone else making a very strict claim and not having really much to back it up. Where we've always been told is, I am the handmaid of the Lord. It is obvious that just using context clues, because I'm like, let's disclaimer it again. I'm not like some deep theology major or anything like that. I don't have any degrees in anything like that. But let's just use context clues. So I'm the slave of the Lord. Like I have to do it. Like what are you talking about, angel? Like I don't even have an option. First of all, why would he come and say, "Hail, full of grace"? Like full of grace, the Lord is with you. That's where the Hail Mary comes from. For Protestants that don't understand the Hail Mary being biblical. But then there's the visitation to Elizabeth later. There's a visitation to Elizabeth later where he literally, I was looking at him and it's terrible. I feel like he's just staring at me. Where she's literally excited, and then Elizabeth like falls to her knees and finishes the Hail Mary. And it's just that baffles me. That how would you explain that? She's being forced into it. So again, when you're running into this kind of stuff, I'm not saying how well he answers. I think it's fascinating how they think. Not him, but Alex, how they think. It's good to do the research on your own, but still like. Also be able to just think as well on your own. Like these are two atheists talking, so obviously no one's there to have that.
The thing I hate most living in Southern California is this insular yoga class idea of spirituality, that it's like this really general kind of like, I listen to these Tibetan bells in my yoga class and light a certain incense and look at a certain crystal and I feel peace so that I can go back to my workaholism and my materialism and my selfish activities.
Yeah, I've got spirituality at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'll try and shoehorn that in for 90 minutes. Now, we all got to feed a family. We all got to work. I'm not denigrating that at all. But spirituality has to be much more than simply tools to be used to reduce anxiety. Spiritual tools also need to be used to galvanize people, inspire people, create hope, create community. This is not a bunch of hippy dippy, airy fairy, love thy neighbor, patchouli soaked music festival, rah rah, incense burning, yoga class, frou frou stuff. The world is hurting right now. What are we going to do about it? The thing I hate.
Well put, Dwight. Well put, Dwight. No, that's great. I agree with all that. That's awesome. Yoga is the new age spirituality stuff. So strange. Yeah, that's great. I love that. Well, we're gonna go ahead and stop there. Kind of went on this one was seeing how it worked out. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we'll have Poe Broussard on for some of these. We'll maybe like go through specific videos that I'll have ready to go. But I hope you guys enjoyed. We got a new episode of Thoughts with Josh coming out on Monday, as well as a new episode of Tell Me About It, Tara on Tuesday. And then I believe we have our fourth episode of the 7 Vices that are opposing virtues coming out on Thursday. So follow along. Again, I love to bring stuff up